A chill pre-dawn at Castle Black returns us to the body of Jon Snow, still dead, and Sir Davos makes for discovery with the last of Jon's mates who all hold up in one of the towers. Melisandre visits and despairs, while Sir Fawn and the traitor council take charge of the Night's Watch, claiming to still be loyal to the cause against the wildlings. Davos sends away Dolorous Edd to get help and delays Fawn and his men from coming to kill them. For now. He's hoping the Red Woman can help, but we discover her true vulnerable crone form as she seems to lose hope in a moment of weakness. Ramsay Bolton mourns over the body of his crazy dead girlfriend before having her fed to the dogs, and his father Roose warns him that without retrieving Sansa Stark back to Winterfell, he won't be of any use as heir to the North. She and Theon struggle in their freezing escape, knowing that it's better to risk death before going back. Theon tries to lure away the pursuit, but both are caught. However, Brienne charges in on horseback with Pod and a fight ensues. It's a grim affair in the cold, but they both prevail with a little bit of help from Greyjoy. And as stubborn as ever, the Lady of Tarth tries once again to swear herself into Sansa's service. This time she accepts. Down in King's Landing, Cersei and her new haircut are excited about Princess Marcella's return from Dorne. But joy turns to ash as Sir Jaime brings in her corpse. She later recounts the witch's prophecy of losing her children, now that the only good one has died, but Jaime remains a rock for his sister. In Dorne, for anyone who cares, the Sand Snakes continue to take over by killing Prince Martell in a coup that it seems everybody wanted, and Princess Trystane is killed out at sea. Over in a Great Sept, Queen Margaery is miserable in her cell, but the High Sparrow comes in to play a little bit of good cop to see if she'd like to confess, and she's not sure what to do. And right over in Meereen, this lady thinks that Tyrion wants to eat her baby, and he listens in with Varys to the fear on the streets and the tension in the air. But those pesky sons of the Harpy have already made their next move and set fire to the ports. Ser Jorah and Daario are out on Dany's trail and set to following after the Khalasar horde that took her. It's already heading out of the grasslands with its new captive, thinking her to be an exotic slave. But Dany explains to the Dothraki that she can understand what they're saying, and as well as being a queen, she's also a Khaleesi. Discount Drogo comes to believe her, but Dany's not free. They're going to take her to Vaes Dothrak, where the wives of dead Khals are meant to live out their lives. And Arya is blind and slumming it on the streets of Braavos, and the waif is still coming to visit from time to time to bully/bully her. Yay? The three-eyed raven, now played by Dr. Kynes, continues to teach Bran to see into the past, and they watch his father Ned as a child among his own siblings, including Ned's sister Lyanna Stark. And oh look, it's a young Hodor who knows how to talk. But that's enough reminiscing for now, because it's back to the living amongst the ancient roots with Hodor and Mira. She's a bit bummed out by the death of her brother and being all cooped up, but one of the children of the forest implies that Bran will need her in the war to come. And time's up, because Sir Alliser Thorne has come to kill the last of the men loyal to Jon Snow. But Dolorous Edd has rallied the wildlings that Jon saved last season, and they take the castle with minimal force before the traitors surrender and get thrown into the cells. Tormund is sad to see Jon go, but Sir Davos convinces Melisandre to try to use her red powers to return him back to life, just like Thoros of Myr did with Beric Dondarrion. It's not her speciality, however, and Jon very much remains dead. Psych! Down on the streets of King's Landing, this cheeky chap tells a bawdy tale about the actions of the incest queen. But free speech isn't a thing round here, and the new zombie guard dog that Qyburn got her is a monster that's feared by even the king's own Lannister men. Young King Tommen has no idea what to do since the Walk of Shame, so Jaime steps up with some life advice and tells him to visit his mother. The High Sparrow pops in on the vigil, bold as brass, and Jaime is real close to killing him for what he's been up to. But the Sparrow's got his crew close to hand with nothing to lose. Tommen takes his Uncle Daddy's advice and visits Cersei to make amends. She's pretty broken up and distant, but Tommen knows that he's not been strong and wants her back on his side. News in Meereen is that both the cities of Astapor and Yunkai have been retaken by the slavers. Tyrion argues for the dragons to be unchained and pops down for a visit. Now they don't burn the hand that frees them, thankfully, but Tyrion knows when he's been pushing his luck. Arya is continuing her blind beating sessions, but refuses to give in when Jaqen H'ghar offers her a lovely life with her sight restored. So instead she's taken back into the Temple of Black and White. Lord Roose Bolton is still not happy about Sansa's escape, and Fat Walder has just given birth to a new heir. So Ramsay just cuts his losses and kills his father to assume command of his house, and then kills off his stepmom and the baby competition by having them torn apart by dogs. Brienne tells Sansa that she saw Arya out and about on her travels back in season 4, and reconfirms with Theon that Bran and Rickon are also alive out there somewhere. They're gonna go to meet up with Jon at Castle Black, but Theon wants to return to the Iron Islands. where Yara Greyjoy thinks that it's time to finally give up invading the north because they've lost all of their captured castles and they're only really formidable at sea. Her Lord Father disagrees, but outside his brother has returned from sailing across the world, Euron Greyjoy. He's got big mad person plans and he can't be doing with any family in his way. The Iron Islanders don't immediately know who killed their king, and Damphair says it's time for a King's Moot, where all of the captains get together to decide who's going to be the next ruler. So Jon Snow lives again, which is weird for everybody involved, and Melisandre is stunned, believing him now to be Azor Ahai. Jon feels pretty bad about being murdered, but Sir Davos gives him encouragement to keep going. In the courtyard, the men are glad to see that he's still Jon inside, and once things have settled down, it's time to hang the traitors. Can't believe they used to be mates. And that's about enough cold grim bullshit for Jon to deal with in one go. So he makes Dolorous Edd the new Lord Commander at Castle Black and gets to leave the Night's Watch, as he did technically die in service. Sam and Gilly update, they're sailing over to Old Town with some stops on the way, and one's doing a little bit better than the other. Back in the past, Bran Greenseer's out over the Tower of Joy, as a younger Ned and Howland Reed, Mira's dad, come to take on Sir Arthur Dayne and Gerald Hightower at the end of Robert's Rebellion. These earlier generation Kingsguard are no joke. And despite being outnumbered, Sir Arthur Dayne is an incredible fighter who slays almost everyone. Luckily for Ned, Howland Reed comes in with a blindside save, but they're really here for what's inside that tower. And did Ned just hear Bran for a second? Well, back to the miserable roots, as the Three-Eyed Raven will not reveal the rest of that story just yet. Dany's being marched out to Vaes Dothrak to take her place amongst the other women. She's not happy to be stuck there, however, but it turns out that all of the big Khalasars are coming home for a great meeting of the Khals. Varys continues his trade and usefulness by winkling out supporters of the Sons of the Harpy and making an offer that they can't refuse. And whilst waiting for the info, Tyrion tries his best to teach Grey Worm and Missandre the pleasures of small talk. So it turns out that the Sons of the Harpy have in fact been funded by the cities of Yunkai, Astapor, and Volantis by the Wise Masters. And back in King's Landing, Qyburn continues to fill Varys' shoes with his secret spy network of children, and Cersei is expecting to use her zombie knight in a trial by combat against the faith. Everybody's bitching about the current situation in the small council, and the Queen of Thorns has been subbed into play while Cersei was imprisoned. So now the entire council cold shoulders Cersei and Jaime out of office. King Tommen tries a show of strength against the High Sparrow regarding his mother's rights, but this guy has rolled a 20 for intelligence and coercion, and he talks Tommen away from the subject of his mother and wife's imprisonment, and ends up convincing him that the crown and the faith should stand as equal powers. Arya continues her beatdowns and how to lie cleanly back in the Temple of Black and White, where her senses sharpen even further to the point where her fatalist training has begun to impress, and her sight is returned. Up in the north, Lord Umber has come to show good faith with Ramsay Bolton with a pledge of banners and a gift. He's captured Osha and Rickon Stark, who's been hit by puberty, and killed the boy's direwolf. Jon's about to head out from Castle Black, but Brienne and Sansa arrive. Oh, hello, sailor. And for the first time since the very first episode, they reunite. The North is in ruins, and the two siblings have nowhere to go but to try to reclaim Winterfell. Sansa is down for the fight, but Jon's a little tired of killing at the moment. Mel and Davos have nothing to do either, so they both default to following Jon. But Brienne is still quite sore about that shadow magic killing Renly, and lets them both know that she executed Stannis for it herself. Over in the Vale, Lord Robin is still weak, and Littlefinger is basically running the show. He's keeping the boy busy with gifts and lying about whose side he's on as usual, plus a little bit of flexing over Lord Royce. He's going to gather the Knights of the Vale so that he can help Sansa against the Boltons. In Meereen, Grey Worm and Missandre are very unhappy with Tyrion trying to negotiate with the wise masters of the other slave cities. They know the true reality of a slave's life and what that really means. T-Dog, however, plays to his strength and barters a Harpy ceasefire by speaking their language. And of course, the freedmen are not happy to hear it. In fact, no one is, because having not lived here for long, Tyrion does not truly know what the masters are like. The Dany fan club track her all the way to the Temple of Vadosh Khaleen, and Daario discovers that Ser Jorah is operating on limited time. Vadosh Khaleen tried to explain the wisdom that they dole out to the other Khals, but Dany is still playing hard to get. She doesn't want to escape from the city, however, but instead plans with her boys for something a bit more impressive. So at the meeting of the Khals where they decide what to do with Dany, she in turn decides what she's going to do with them, and pulls out the old Targaryen fireproof trump card by burning all of the Dothraki leaders leaders alive whilst doing her best impression of Sephiroth. No point in fighting an argument like that. So now the Dothraki have a new queen. Damn, you've come a long way, girl. In the Great Sept, the High Sparrow tries his hand at turning a worn-out Queen Marjorie over to the faith with a story about his own sins back in the day. And after a visit with her brother Sir Loras in miserable condition, Marjorie realizes that they might have to change tactics. Cersei checks in on Tommen, who is still weak, and discovers the High Sparrow is planning another Walk of Atonement, this time for Marjorie. Tyrell and Lannisters finally see common ground and get ready to take down the Faith militant by force, even at the risk of civil war within the city. Oh, and Theon makes it back to Pike in the Iron Islands. Yara is disgusted at what he's become and the declined effort to rescue him in the other season, but with their father dead, Theon thinks that his sister should be the one to rule the Iron Islands. In Winterfell, the new Lord Bolton seems to like Osha's cheeky tongue, but he's always playing games with people, and despite her efforts to kill him, Ramsay is one step ahead of her play. Up at the wall, Tormund is giving Brienne his sexy face, but Jon and co receive word that Rickon is now a Bolton captive and that Ramsay plans on all sorts of torture. So Sansa urges Jon to rally the North and the Wildlings together to fight. In fact, Sansa's still getting letters from Littlefinger for secret meetings in Molestown. These two ladies are not happy to see him since he coerced Sansa into marrying an abusive monster, but Peter Baelish still wants to be useful to her with his army of the Vale, and word on the street is Brynden Tully has retaken Riverrun. So Jon is Ned's bastard son, asterisk, and Sansa has the Stark name. Between them they could rally the North against the Boltons, but they will need the Tullys of Riverrun to get as much help as possible. With her blind training and sight restored, Arya is pretty badass, and almost goes toe-to-toe with the waif who's still trying to break her. Jaqen H'ghar tells her the history of the first Faceless Men, and that they actually founded the free city of Braavos from behind the scenes. It's time for Arya to have her second chance as a faceless man, her target this time being an actress. There's a great but somewhat inaccurate play about the recent Westerosi events that kind of hits a raw nerve. So undercover Arya plans to poison the actress's rum, but she still asks questions, and Jaqen reminds her that death comes for the good just as much as it does for the bad. This time the three-eyed raven takes Bran deep into the past, to a time when the children of a forest were still plentiful across the land, and the moment that they used their magic powers to make a new creature to help fight the invading armies of man. The children of the forest were the very ones who created the White Walkers, but it was a weapon that they could not control. Later that night, Bran green sneaks back into the same place, but now it's a present-day winter bastion of the undead. The White Army seems to await instruction, but the Night's King himself is able to actually see Bran and spikes him, leaving a real-life mark and enabling the others to now attack the safety of the tree caves. And just like that, it's time to get moving. The three-eyed raven downloads all of his cosmic knowledge into Bran, ready or not, and the others break the protective magic of the remaining children. But Bran is too busy down in Dreamtown with the raven to notice. Whites pour themselves all over the surface, digging down whilst the White Walkers stroll in through the front. Things are desperately close, but Bran finally receives a message, and deep from the past he walks into Child Hodor, sending out commands up through his lifetime to get the modern-day Hodor moving. Perhaps there's hope, but Summer is killed in their defense and the chase is on. The Night's King kills the three-eyed raven and the dead tumble up from the abyss. The last child of the forest buys a little more time, but they keep on coming, and so Bran gives one final desperate instruction whilst he's brain hacking from the past to hold the door. A single burning message which boiled down the boy to the simple Hodor that we know today, all for the sake of Bran and Mira's escape. It's the Kingsmoot on Pike, where everybody wants to be the new ruler. Yara Greyjoy is good at rallying the captains, and Theon the male heir further backs her play. But crazy Uncle Euron Greyjoy is back from his travels to claim the Salt Throne. His speech is better than hers, and he's also heard that the Dragon Queen is doing well overseas, and plans to unite their power. So just like that, he's inducted, and made their new king. Yara and Theon, however, are smart enough to realize they'd best leave before Uncle Euron can murder them, and they manage to take the best part of a fleet with them. For a third time, Dany has to decide what to do with Ser Jorah, but the Greyscale has made the choice for both of them. So she commands him to find a cure for the incurable and then return to her side. That fragile piece that Tyrion made appears to be holding in the streets, but he needs to bolster the public opinion of Daenerys by enlisting the support of the Red Priests. Fortunately, they are already on board with the Mother of Dragons and are even able to disturb Varys, who despises sorcerers. Mira is still dragging Bran through the cold, and he's still in the past, absorbing all of the knowledge of everything that's ever been taking place in the series. Once again, they're about to snuff it, but Cold Hands makes an appearance and fights the dead with a flaming chain mace. Come with me if you want to live. This guy is Uncle Benjen Stark, lost and killed beyond the wall in season 1. But before he turned into a white, the children of the forest found him first, to keep him both undead and yet human at the same time. Sam, Gilly and the baby make it back to his old family home en route to Old Town and the Maesters, as he hopes his family will look after Gilly and the babe. The ladies of House Tarly are really nice and lend a dress, but Sam's father, Randall Tarly, is a stern asshole and discovers that Gilly is a wildling. So Sam kind of mans up and decides that they're all leaving, and steals his father's Valyrian steel sword on the way out. Tommen is finally allowed to see Marjorie before her walk of atonement, but she knows that he's a wet flannel by now, and she's taking a different tactic, seeming to turn completely over to the Faith and the High Sparrow. Outside the Sept, Jaime and the Tyrells are ready to finally use force, much to Marjorie's surprise, but the High Sparrow's plan has moved even further. Although Jaime is ready to finish things, King Tommen himself has been talked into the Crown and the Faith uniting as twin powers in control of Westeros. Ooh, you bugger. Jaime tries to plead some sense into the boy, but is booted out of the Kingsguard to go help the Freys retake control of the Riverlands, and Cersei brings back a bit of the old incest tease to help keep him compliant. You see, Lord Walder Frey is up at the twins, and he's not happy that his sons have lost Riverrun and that the Riverlands are revolting against them, though they still at least have Edmure Tully captive since the Red Wedding. Arya is still set to assassinate the actress, but comes to know everybody a little too well, and in doing so rediscovers her original intentions of revenge in Westeros. She won't be a mindless killer without cause, and reclaims Needle along with her identity, but this now makes her a target of the Faceless Men, and the Waif cannot wait to kill her. And on the way back to Meereen with her new Dothraki army, Dany reunites with Drogon and promotes everyone to Bloodrider, before explaining they're all gonna go conquer Westeros together once they find enough ships. OMG, the Hound is still alive, and since season 4 he appears to have given up the sword, instead having a simpler life of building wooden churches for his new mate Lovejoy. It's the closest he's ever come to being at peace after being taken in by good men, but it's not a good world, and troublesome members of a Brotherhood without banners kill the peaceful parish whilst the Hound is off chopping wood, and hang Lovejoy. The Hound is not impressed. Marjorie is now being super pious down at the Sept, and following the almost bloodbath, offers to talk some sense into the Queen of Thorns on the High Sparrow's behalf. So Marjorie, under the watchful gaze of Sister Frumpy, pretends to follow doctrine, but in truth warns her grandmother to get out of King's Landing while she still can. Cersei finally admits that she screwed up with the High Sparrow, but can't convince Olenna Tyrell to stay and help. Jaime, Bronn and a Lannister force arrive at Riverrun to help retake the castle once more. The Freys are making fools of themselves with empty threats, and the Blackfish isn't buying any of it. So Jaime knocks some order into them and parleys with Brynden, hoping for a clean surrender. But Brynden remembers the arsehole that Jaime was, and not the better man he's become, and won't budge. Jon and Tormund are going round on tour, where they gain the support of the wildlings but still have a long way to go to build up an army. Over on Bear Island, they visit Lyanna, the child heir to House Mormont. She's great, a straight-talking girl who takes no shit or coercion from Jon or Sansa. But Sir Davos as ever has the knack for keeping it real. The Boltons must be finished so that the North can be united before the undead come for them. The Glovers, however, are more cautious about an uprising and fighting alongside wildlings, having lost much already in their support of Robb Stark's war. They simply don't have enough men, so Sansa bites the bullet and asks Littlefinger for military support after all. Theon and Yara's Ironborn fleet have made it as far as Volantis on their way to see the Dragon Queen, managing to keep a good step ahead of their Uncle Euron. Yara needs Theon to learn to relax and be himself again, but it's gonna be a long climb. Arya gets ready to leave Braavos and head back for the west, but the Waif comes to give her a belly full of stabbing instead. She barely escapes her and is bleeding out as she wanders the streets. Fortunately, the actress that she refused to kill tends to her wounds, and Arya must trust in having a friend. You see, together they can nope, too late, the waif has killed her. So it's run for your lifetime as Arya seems to completely forget that she's been stabbed in the stomach, and the waif pulls her best impression of the T-1000 whilst Arya's mostly tumbling down in defense. However, the girl returns to where she's kept Needle and uses her blind training to turn the tables in her favor. So it's one more face to add to the collection back at the Temple of Black and White, and Arya explains to Jaqen that she quits. It's time to go home. The scum that killed Lovejoy's parish don't last long, having reawakened the Hound, and they each get a taste of his axe. But there's still one more to go. However, it looks like Beric Dondarrion and Thoros are about to beat him to the punch, as far as justice is concerned, but they hash out a compromise and the Hound joins the rest of the Brotherhood for lunch. There's an evil coming from the north, and they urge him to join in the fight. Varys is heading off to prepare Westeros for Dany's eventual return whilst the peace on the streets is still holding, and Tyrion tries to teach his dull friends to enjoy a drink, and God bless him for the effort. However, the former slaves were right. The peace was just a lie, and the armies of the Wise Masters have come to reclaim their property. The Faith Militant have come to fetch Cersei on behalf of the High Sparrow, with Lancel Lannister at the head of the gang. Well, it's time for a little violence, just to make a point, and Cersei will come when she's good and ready. There's a royal announcement, and Cersei is kept at a distance from her son as he announces not only the date of her trial, along with Sir Loras, but also that trial by combat is no longer a legal option. It's another move by the Sparrow to destabilize her position, but Qyburn has been investigating another more drastic option on her behalf. Brienne reaches Riverrun and the siege to talk with Jaime, and Bronn is happy to see an old familiar face in Podrick from back in their days working for Tyrion. The Lady of Tarth reports him both crossing Arya and returning Sansa to safety, and that she's come for Brynden Tully, which technically puts them on opposing sides. She wants the Tullys to march north, and Jaime wants them out of Riverrun, so it could still work, but he won't take back Oathkeeper. That sword now belongs to her. So she treats with Brynden, and it's stubborn versus stubborn for a while, but the man will not abandon his home. Jaime in the meantime tries another tactic and treats instead with captive Edmure, convincing him into a peaceful surrender. So he returns the actual Lord of Riverrun back to the castle, where he outranks the Blackfish and can order everybody to surrender and open the gates. It's a near bloodless victory, but whilst Brienne and Pod escape by boat, Brynden Tully dies off camera fighting the Lannisters, and Jaime and Brienne part ways once more. It's a fiery siege against the pyramids of Meereen, and things aren't looking good, but Dany flies straight in on Drogon to ask why her city is currently being set on fire. Meereen looks like it might fall to the siege, and Tyrion is having a tough time selling the actual good that he's done here while she was away. Dany speaks of payment in blood, but Tyrion reminds her that the Mad King Aerys planned on burning his own city to the ground with secret wildfire caches, and that she might want to make a smarter tactic. So terms of surrender are opened up for discussion with the Wise Masters, but there's been a little confusion, as Dany isn't discussing her surrender, but theirs. And now it's time for her dragons to shine with air superiority whilst her Dothraki horde reclaim the streets. The Slaver forces are mostly incinerated at sea as the tide of a battle turns very quickly, and Grey Worm finishes off the worst of the Wise Masters. It's parley time outside of Winterfell as the Starks meet the Boltons, and Ramsay notes he has the superior force and position. Jon tries to goad him into single combat, but Ramsay doesn't give a damn. That night, Jon plans for battle and hopes to save Rickon, but Sansa knows Ramsay, and knows deep down they will never get their brother back, and that there's always a sick game plan up Ramsay's sleeve. But Jon doesn't heed her counsel. Melisandre has been keeping relatively quiet these days, and Sir Davos discovers the exact spot where she had Princess Shireen burned alive. Oh dear. Theon and co have made it to Meereen, and Tyrion seems to misremember just exactly who is mean to who. Dany is curious to find a potential queen of the Iron Islands before her, with 100 ships as well as the captured Wise Master fleet. These ladies seem to get on, and Yara warns that Euron is also building ships to come over with a proposal of marriage. So reaving and pillaging is now out for the Ironborn, but other than that, Dany is happy to have them over to her side. It's the grey dawn of battle, and Ramsay's first move to goad Jon is to play pin the arrow on a Rickon. For some reason, the lad doesn't strafe from side to side whilst he's running, so he basically gets what he deserves. But it's lured Jon out of position in a rescue attempt, however, and things look grim. But his own forces charge out and clash with the Boltons just in the nick of time. It's pure battle chaos, with arrows raining down in different volleys, and Jon cuts down whoever he can find in the carnage. From afar, Ramsay fires arrows onto friend and foe alike, whilst Jon is in the thick of it, and mountains of corpses pile up in the kill zone. returns. Then Ramsay sends in the Umbers, while the west of Jon's wildling forces also join the battle. These Umbers under the Bolton banners are trained and organized spearmen with a shield wall, and the surrounded forces cannot break through. It's looking bad again as they are slowly whittled down, and panic ensues, suffocating Jon in the throng. But just as all hope looks to be lost, the armies of the Vale sweep down thanks to Sansa accepting Littlefinger's help to her side. The last of the enemy is destroyed, and Ramsay runs back to Winterfell with Jon and co shortly behind. The gates are barred, but Jon has a giant who sacrifices everything to breach through. The castle is taken, but Ramsay continues to be a grade A dick, until Jon beats the shit out of him in the courtyard, and Sansa gets her payback by having him tied to a chair and fed alive to his own dogs. It's a fitting end, but Sansa is a harder lady than she used to be, and stays a little to watch. The cost was dear, but once again the direwolf of the Starks hangs at Winterfell. In the capital, it's time for Cersei and Sir Loras's trial by the faith, and everyone prepares for what is likely to be a long old day and also one hell of a show. And the sept is packed with lords, ladies, and onlookers. Curiously, Cersei looks like she's getting dressed for war, and Tommen is, well, you know. First on the cards is Sir Loras Tyrell, who's pretty much broken by his time in captivity. He confesses his crimes of sleeping with other men and awaits his judgment. But he goes even further to renounce his title and any claim to his Tyrell inheritance by joining the Faith Militant with a fun new tattoo. King Tommen is about to head on over, but is kept in his room by dead Sir Gregor. It's becoming clear that Cersei doesn't plan on joining the trial, so Lancel and co go out to fetch her, but not before following a curious-looking street child into the tunnels below the Great Sept. Meanwhile, Grand Maester Pycelle is lured into Qyburn's laboratory and stabbed to death by all the little birds. In fact, it's stab o'clock as Lancel takes a knife to the back just before he discovers an incredible cache of wildfire, barrels upon barrels of the green death with a guttering candle in the middle. Marjorie is deeply suspicious that Cersei isn't attending, and drops her pious act to tell the High Sparrow that everyone needs to leave. And for once, the High Sparrow looks a little unsure of himself, but it's too late for them, as a wildfire ignites and the entire sept and surrounding area is obliterated in an instant, killing everyone inside. And with the Sector 7 plate destroyed, Cersei watches on with a little whine. And so after all, it really is Cersei's time to shine, as she even has Sister Frumpy tied to a board for a little bit of gloating and a whole lot of torture at the hands of dead Sir Gregor. Lovely. But just when everything is finally going well for her, young King Tommen, in perhaps what is his first ever truly independent decision, steps out of the window in his grief. And with all of her children dead, Cersei has lost the only thing she's ever genuinely tried to protect other than herself. Up at the Twins, a Freys and the Lannisters are celebrating the recapture of Riverrun. Jaime doesn't really like these scumbags, however, or the Lord Vulture himself, and can barely bite his tongue before he leaves back to King's Landing, where he finds things a little bit different than when he left. And with Cersei now crowned as queen. Later that night, however, Walder gets another slice of pie from a serving girl who turns out to be Arya. As well as being able to fast travel back to Westeros, she's fed Walder his own sons for dinner, before slicing his throat in sweet revenge. Sam and Gilly arrive at Old Town and the Citadel to begin his maester's studies. They're a bit of a stuffy bunch, but Sam is shown to the library, which turns out to be a massive chamber housing one of the astrolabes used in the show's title sequence. Jon's settling back in at Winterfell, but Sir Davos steps up in anger about Princess Shireen, and Melisandre admits to burning her at the stake, and it breaks his heart. Davos means to execute her, but her powers could prove too useful in the upcoming war against the dead. So Jon banishes her from the north instead, and tells Sansa that they must work together from now on. Littlefinger is staying over as well because he's still nursing a weird boner for Sansa, but she's experienced enough horrors to no longer be the fool she once was. And so all of the northern houses gather to pledge themselves to the White Wolf, the new king in the north. Well done, mate. I hope. The Sand Snakes meet up with Olenna Tyrell to plan for war against the Lannisters, and it seems Varys is in Westeros and responsible for setting up the alliance. And having defeated her enemies and secured Meereen, Dany is at last ready to head to Westeros after 6 seasons. Daario will have to stay here though for propriety's sake, and Tyrion is promoted to Hand of the Queen. So she takes to the sea with her entire force, and what? Varys is back there now? Is he teleporting? Dead Benjen Stark takes Bran and Mira to the wall before going on his way, and Bran finally greenseers back to the Tower of Joy, where he watches his father console his Aunt Lyanna, who is dying from complications with the birth birth of her son. She makes Ned promise to protect her boy in secret from King Robert. Not Ned's son, but a nephew, Jon Snow. Oh my god. So 2 out of the 4 remaining Starks are back at Winterfell, with Bran heading south from the far north. Arya has returned to Westeros as a highly capable assassin, and pretty much everyone of note in King's Landing is now dead, except for Cersei, Jaime and Qyburn. And meanwhile, Daenerys Stormborn is finally sailing home with Tyrion and her crew, her freed army, the Unsullied, the Dothraki, the dragons and her mixed Ironborn fleet. Wow, so thanks a lot for watching everyone. Making these